Well,
Although I usually
folks,
don't have that problem anyway.
oh, well, folks, we are all here. That is all the counselors, Counselor Dora Matthews, Counselor Joe McEwen, Counselor Joe Lamb, by phone, Counselor Brian Woods by phone, myself, Mayor George Comrie, and we have our CAO clerk, Michelle Hendry, our treasurer, Pat Allen, our fire chief, Bob Whitman, and our manager of public works, Dave Creaser. So, and that appears to be everyone who is on the call at the moment. I will call the meeting to order at 6:38. And we will start our open session, if you're ready, Madam CAO, with the national anthem.
One moment. Thought I had everything organized. Let me try again.
Are we still on the call?
We're still waiting, Joe.
We're
Okay,
still
thank
waiting
you.
for the national anthem.
Okay, thank you.
It's seems
Did-
like we have the same problem with the national anthem, whether we meet in person or whether we so, meet up by Zoom.
Did everyone hear that?
We heard nothing.
No.
We saw nothing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I had it fixed. I saw it. It actually played on my system. Shall I try one more time?
If you want to, and if we don't make it, we'll skip it. And
Either that or you can sing it, Michelle.
Well, I was in the choir, but they put me in the back row. Okay, I'm not sure I can cue it up quickly, and I don't want to hold things up, so I apologize. I thought we had this, I had it fixed, and we didn't, but I can assure you it was played, and I'll figure out for next time. Thank you.
okay, thank you. I will read the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement then. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded, and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. Okay, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest with respect to the items on tonight's agenda? Hearing nothing, I will note that there is none declared. And we will move on to approve the agenda. Could I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
I'll move.
Okay,
I'll second Counselor Lamb.
I heard Councillor Gorham Matthews first, and I think I heard Councillor Wood second. Is that correct?
That works.
Okay. So it's moved and seconded that the agenda for the meeting be adopted as presented. Any objections? Hearing none, that's carried. We have an agenda. And it's actually a fairly short one, or it could be a fairly short one. Want to speak too soon? There are no, oh yeah, sorry, there are. Matters arising from our closed session, 3.1. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, to approve? Yes, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone approves the closed session minutes of the regular council meeting of September 21st, 21, which we reviewed and closed.
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second Councilor McEwen.
thank you, Councillor McEwen. Any discussion? Really shouldn't be, I guess. Any opposition?
Mr. Mayor, sorry. I just remembered I wasn't at that meeting, so is it still okay that I approve them, or should someone else?
On September 20,
I recommend someone else. Mr. Mayor.
yes, I
Yeah,
think,
sorry about that.
I agree with this, with the clerk, you're correct.
Yeah.
Would someone else
Sorry about
move?
that.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, thank you,
I can move.
Councillor Gorham. Okay, I got Councillor Gorham Matthews, I heard first, so. All right, we have moved by Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Let those minutes be approved. And I didn't hear any objections, so consider them approved. We have no presentations or delegations, no planning items, and no public meeting on the agenda. And that brings us to the consent agenda, which consists of the regular council meeting minutes for September 21st and the unfinished business listed on page 4 of the agenda. I'm just going to bring up on the screen right now. Would someone like to move those items in the consent agenda be received and or approved?
I'll move, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham Matthews. Thank you. Any discussion? Or any opposition to approving those items and or receiving? Okay, thank you. So there are no matters arising. I'm assuming there are no matters arising from the consent agenda? accounts payable. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone approve accounts payable in the amount of $140,342.60 and payroll in the amount of $50,552.09.
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods. Thank you. All right, is there any discussion, any of those items that you would like to question or comment on?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Counselor Lamb, I have 2 or 3, please.
Please go ahead.
Okay, page 3, payment number 36181 to Moore Propane. I had asked 3 meetings ago, I think in the last month or so, that we check out the other providers of propane. I mentioned that we're in a bit of we have a consortium here in Whitestone that last year was $49.5, I think. And this year it's $62.5 per liter. And I know we always enjoyed rates below that. And we're with, by the way, Superior. So I guess the question is, did we check out the other places and what they're willing to sell us propane for, and what's involved? I guess you'd have to take tanks and replace them, and that may be a game stopper right there. But anyway, and also in there, by the way, we only pay $1 for tank rental. So I don't know what the municipality's paying for tank rental, but that's what we pay. So there may be more money here than meets the eye. But anyway, can someone report on what, if anything's been done on that, please?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We haven't forgotten about that. I'll be working with David Creaser. We were just looking to get a few other projects out of the way, and I think the proper way to do this is go to tender because of the amount of money that we spend on propane a year. So we want to do a full tender and look at all the options, including, the tank rentals. And you're right, some tanks will have to be replaced. So the answer is we haven't forgotten about it, and we'll be moving on it in the next week or so to prepare a tender and consider if this is the right time of year for it, but we can at least issue a tender and check out what the prices would be and what the implementation would be.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing I would add is that some companies will take the propane out of your current tank and put it into their new tank. I don't know how whether that's right or not. Some do, some don't. But anyway, I'm sure you'll do a good job of researching that. Maybe we stay with Moore, maybe we don't. Who knows? So thank you. My second question is on page 7, down at the bottom, which is, it says 185, and below that 527. So magneto on truck and trailer and safety inspection. So I'm not very mechanically oriented, but it just seems that $3,214 seems like an awful lot for a safety inspection, but maybe I'm wrong. So, but can someone comment on that, please?
We happen to have Dave Creaser on the line, so I think I'll defer to Dave. He would know more about it than I do. Dave, if you could unmute.
Yes, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Yes, this truck in particular did go in for a safety inspection. It did need a variety of work. The brakes on the back end, the backers had rotten with the salt being exposed to the salt. They rotten off, and it gotten into the brakes, and it needed all new brakes, and then it did need some work up front for the defrost some of the motors up front that move the heat around and the defrost of the front windshield. That's part of the safety to have your windshield clear. And there was a few other minor things, but those were the major factors for this vehicle, for the inspection, the annual inspection on the vehicles. The road salt does seem to be quite hard on it, and we have a new hot water sprayer and an area that we can clean it now. So the trucks should be cleaned better and to help with the salt on our equipment. So going forward, we should have better maintenance on our equipment.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying. I didn't know whether that included, it wasn't just for the safety inspection, it was for all the repairs as a result of the safety inspection.
You're correct, yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's
Any
all I
other,
have.
any other questions or comments on payables? All right, if not, are you ready for the question? And if so, can I ask our clerk to call the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes?
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Comrie.
Yes?
Thank you. That resolution is carried.
Okay, thank you. We have no bylaws, at least not, we're going to talk about one in a minute, but we have no bylaws in the bylaw section of the agenda. Under staff reports, we have one report, which is our budgetary control report for the 9 months ending September 30th. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives report FIN 2021-09 for information purposes, and that staff continue to keep council updated with quarterly budget control reports.
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen, seconded by
I'll second.
thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. I guess first of all, I would ask our treasurer, Pat Allen, since she's with us, if she wants to introduce her report briefly, and then we'll open it up if there are any questions or comments.
Sure, yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the levies and funding still have to be paid and received. I just want to point out that we did receive the $800 from the Heritage Canada grant for the fireworks, but I had to return it because we canceled our fireworks display. We still have some safe restart money to be received as well. We unfortunately did not receive the summer student grant, which was for $8,900. And I think from there, the rest of it's pretty much under control.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Any questions from councilors?
I have a question.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, go ahead, please.
Did we ever hear back about the grant that we applied for the accessibility path at the Dundome at the waterfront park? I know David had applied for it. I just never heard if we'd heard that we didn't get it, or if they haven't looked at it yet. I wasn't sure when the deadline was for that.
May I speak to that point?
Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did hear back. I did look into it. We did not receive the grant. And I did look into try and find more information as to why or what the criteria was. But there doesn't seem to be any response to that fact. So it was disappointing, and we'll continue to try in the future. And it would be nice to get a little more feedback with that regard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, a question of our treasurer on the revenues. I'm just curious, the unless enrollment in monthly pre-authorized payment plan is to do with the final installment due October 31st. Pat, could you explain that a little bit? And secondly, just on the summer student grant, that sounds like a first probably that we haven't received any kind of grants for a summer student. Is that also a question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor McEwen. We didn't get it last year, the summer student grant, which was unfortunate. So I'm not sure why we didn't get it this year as well, but I have asked for some follow-up information from the grant people. The payment options, we do have a pre-authorized monthly payment option. Our October 31st payment is coming up, which is the installment. So we do have about 18 to 20,000 every month for the monthly PAD. And then we also have a final installment on October 31st coming due as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions on the report?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just I noticed, and I know that hopefully we're going to get this done. This week could be a good one. It looks like the weather is going to be okay over the next week, so maybe it'll be done this week. But there's an awful lot of slurry work to be done on or surface treatment work on balsam and I think on part of canning, if I'm not mistaken. And I also see some at some point, I think out somewhere on the Bunny Trail and another area where there's cracks and things like that. So all that kind of surface treatment work, there's nothing showing that any monies have been spent. So I assume that's going to be done. Hopefully, well, we've got kind of like Indian summer maybe this week or whatever. The only other question that I have, and is I have two more questions. The sidewalks, there's a budget for sidewalks. I think that's the sidewalks in the village that we wanted to work on. It says work in progress to develop the estimates. I would have thought we had an estimate here of 6,000, but anyway, where does the sidewalk sit? And my third and last question is on York Street. Someone had brought up, and I thought it was a great idea, that people, because it's paved on York Street, they tend to be going too fast around some of those bends, and they had suggested that we get the line or the road painted for the summertime, and I thought it was a good idea, and I think staff were looking at getting that done, particularly since from Perry Sound to Magnetawan, I think they had line painters out. So maybe staff can comment on those three things. But Pat, thanks once again for your report. I find it very informative, and I'm glad to hear we're in good financial stead, and I think we should all be proud of that. Okay, thank you.
Are there answers to the questions that Councillor Lamb raised?
May I speak to those?
Go ahead,
questions,
please.
Mr. Mayor?
Dave. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The weather is quite favorable to complete these activities for slurry seal and surface treatment. Slurry seal is ongoing. It began today on the Bunny Trail, and moving to surface treatment is a different crew, same contractor, and they should be mobilizing tomorrow or the next day. They're coming from Strong. We've had some challenges getting them on site. I know they had a lot of rain this year, and I believe they've taken on a lot of work. But the weather is favorable, so we should see that happening. Hopefully completed by the end of the week. That's the plan. So we'll clean those up. Excellent weather for it this week, and next week we got some great temperatures at night and during the day. For the sidewalks with the MTO, we've reached out to them. We're just waiting to hear back to get a meeting together for the sidewalks through town. We've also reached out to our engineer, who we normally use as well, to coordinate a time. I know that MTO seems to be short on staff and they're slow at getting back, so we're really trying to get them up here. I've had several discussions with them, and hopefully the next couple of weeks we can get them up here and make that meeting happen. So that is moving forward. So we should have more information for next year's budget for the sidewalks through town, as well as the line painting. I've been in contact with the contractors, several contractors, and we're trying to get them on site. There's seems to be an overwhelming amount of work, but this favorable weather, hopefully they can get some of the work done and get over to us. We've done pretty well with our projects. The library project for the water system, it may be moving later this week as well. Hopefully we'll get the boring under the Highway 124 completed by the end of this week. We'll just have to do the tie-ins with the plumbers and get all that done in the next week or two moving forward. A lot of the other projects are moving ahead rather well with the weather. Hopefully that does answer your questions.
Did that answer your questions, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, thank you, David. That's good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's Michelle here.
Yeah.
I just perhaps Dave could talk a little bit about the electronic information signs. I don't think he missed it intentionally, but that one is moving along quite well as also. So Dave, you could speak to that and the timelines perhaps.
Yes,
David,
thank you
go
very
ahead.
much. Thank you. The signs are moving along well. We are looking to get the foundation in next week for the signs, and then shortly after that, we're hoping to get our signs put up. But everything is in place. Materials, I believe, they have them. They're just putting everything together for our signs. We have all our permits, and we're working with the contractor. We will be doing the excavation and putting in the sonotubes, and they will be hanging the steel. Just to move things ahead, we had trouble getting a contractor. No surprise there, to do the concrete work. So we're helping with that work through Public Works, trying to move this schedule along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your comment about the shooting some a conduit underneath Highway 124 from the community center to the library reminded me, when you do that work, are you going to put an extra conduit or two that could be used for emergency power, B, internet fiber cable if we need to connect the two sites together? I know you're putting a pipe which will take water from the water treatment system that's in the community center, but can you put another, at least when you're mooring, can you put another conduit, even a flexible conduit or something in there that could take some power cables and some fiber.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a permit to put three pipes underneath Highway 124, each of them being 2-inch inner diameter, 50 millimeters. The first one would serve with potable water from the community center to the library. It would be primary and secondary treated with chlorination. We've worked with the health unit with the plans on this. So that's the first conduit. The second conduit will take the water, the discharge water coming from the sump pump, which runs regularly, quite often, to the catch basin across the road, located just outside the community center, on the low side of the community center. So the sump pump discharge will go underneath Highway 124 to the catch basin, and
Sorry to interrupt, you, but can I ask where that goes right now?
Currently it's just being pumped outside the library, just
Onto the
outside
ground?
and onto the ground, which then flows onto Highway 124. In the wintertime, it does cause quite a bit of ice to go across the highway and then down to the neighbors' couple neighbors' entrances. It tries to find its way down to a catch basin on Highway 124, but it usually freezes well beforehand.
Or
So we
gets
have,
there, yeah. Okay,
we have
thanks.
quite a bit of ice. So that will be looked after. Then the third pipe is going to be just as you spoke, will be for a power source from the generator over to that sump pump. We will have a Wi-Fi enabled alarm system to the sump pump should it fail. We also have on standby off to the side, we'll have a quick connect sump pump that we can just put it back in place should it fail. So that way to mitigate any flooding in the library. We're also looking to tidy up the existing water treatment units that we have in place in the library. The water is quite bad in the library out of the well. It's full of that iron. It's full of iron sludge that just covers all of our UV lights and fills up our filtration system, and it does make quite a mess. There's also a problem with the discharge out to the septic. I believe there's one of the pipes going out there maybe flowing in the wrong direction, slightly in the wrong direction. We're looking at fixing that up as well. So there's quite a few things are going to be caught all around the same time, including the electronic side. We're trying to get all this work done at the same time to minimize the disturbance to the library, so we can get everything cleaned up and just tidied up. And that's moving forward. The next couple of weeks, we're getting that going.
Are you going to decommission the well?
That would be the next step. I'll have to.
But you're
look
going
into that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's necessary being a drilled well. I don't know. It may be. I don't know. If
But
it
you're
would
going
be
to stop
necessary because-
using that system is what I'm saying. I
Correct.
think, right? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean decommission in the sense of a dug well, no. Yeah. Okay, thank
Correct.
you very much.
Yes, the new water system, the new treated water system is quite good out of the community center, and we do get consistent good results from that, and that's what we're looking for. The health unit is pushing for that, so they're quite happy about this move. Yeah.
I'm sure the folks at the library will be too. Are there other questions? I guess we're getting a little off the topic of the report itself, but are there any other questions or comments on
Mr. Mayor, I have a few. It's Councillor Woods.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I just flipping through these and scanning through them earlier. I would just want to draw everyone's attention to page 38 and 39, a few things that I just have questions on. So I look at our approved budget values on a few things here, and then what our actuals are as of September 27th. First one, item 16,320. We budgeted 10,000 and we spent 16,975. Next one down would be item 16,393, the 4x4 truck maintenance. We're budgeting 7,500, but we spent $17,233 on that truck for maintenance. You know, the Freightliner item 16,402, we budgeted 16,500. We spent just over 22,000. And I mean, the list goes on. Are we budgeting? Like, I'm just asking questions here. Are we not budgeting enough initially, or are we spending too much? Do we have aged, like, real rough shape equipment that needs it, or are we being hard on the equipment? It just seems to me like we're getting maintenance bills on all of our pieces of equipment that are extremely high all the time.
Again, Dave, can you respond to
Yes,
that
thank you,
comment?
Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to. Yes, thank you. With our equipment this year, we've used our equipment quite a bit. We've had a hard time getting contractors, and we've moved a lot of material ourselves. We had a very good price on materials. We've responded quickly to concerns from the public, and we have completed rather a large amount of work this year. And when we turn the wheels on the equipment and we use the equipment, it does require more maintenance on the equipment. The 4x4 that we did talk about, it's the 1-ton diesel that we use for plowing, and we do need it for plowing, which is too much money. It's just too much money for that. The cost of ownership seems to be too high. It's a diesel unit, and we've had different issues with the after treatment and the computers and the electronics on it from the salt. So it recommended for replacement with a gas engine, maybe a cheaper gas for a 3/4 ton that would need less maintenance, because the cost of ownership seems to be too high on this. We don't seem to need a diesel to plow for that. The other trucks, they did require a fair bit of maintenance with the salt being so hard on it. But to keep them safe and on the road, absolutely have to, with our CVR, complete this maintenance for one, for the safety, and two, to meet the service levels for the public, for us to be out on the road. So those are necessary. The other question was regarding supplies and tools. We did require some tools in-house to do more maintenance on the vehicles, oil changes and regular maintenance things, lights and things that we can do ourselves. We can't do brakes or anything to do with that, but if we can do a little more maintenance in-house, we did spend a little bit of money to get all of our filters and maintenance items that we can do in-house, lights and all these things that we need to fix on hand. If we have a light out, we have to replace it right away before we go out. So those items we did spend a little bit on, but it seemed to make good sense to have our staff be able to complete light maintenance duties in-house if we can. So hope to work on keeping this down or lower hopefully going forward. We do have some major issues here and there on some equipment that it's hard to forecast. But next year we'll have to look closely at the budget and see what we have with our equipment. I know the backhoe is another one that needs more maintenance than it should, and the cost of ownership seems to be high on it. But we do need that piece of equipment to load our trucks for sand, and we also need it for a variety of other repairs for the roads. So we're going to take a hard look at our equipment and the costs going into next budget and our maintenance, and get a report to council with a little more information if we can.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave. I'm right there with you when it comes to buying tools so you can do maintenance in-house. I'm always the guy, I always fix my own stuff, and you got to spend the money on the tools. So, I mean, I'm not disputing that in the fact. I just wanted to ask the question. I do have another quick one, probably very easily answered, and I'm missing something. It would be on page 47 of 140. The purchase amount of the riding mower. It says the actuals is 8248. But I want to say in the meeting, it would have been the 21st, it was just over $9,000 that we paid out for that. Is it just that it doesn't show the taxes that's charged in this agenda on page 47 that I'm referring to, and it does on the other one? Someone just clear that up for me.
Oh, hi, it's Pat, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor
Go ahead.
Woods. Sure. What the system does, we get a 0.8646 rebate on the 13% tax. So it factors that in. When we pay the bill, it actually factors it in. So the net of that amount is what's expense, and then we set up a rebate from the government.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions about this report? All right, if the motion on the floor is to receive it for information purposes, is there any objection to approving that motion? All right, thank you, and thank you, Pat, for your report. Brings us to number 14 on the agenda, which is a discussion around the proposed new waste management bylaw. And I guess I don't think I see that we're looking to approve the bylaw tonight, unless I'm missing something, but perhaps I'll ask if our CAO clerk wants to
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
wants to introduce this, and then we can just see if there are further amendments to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're correct. This is not on the agenda to have the bylaw approved. The intent is to finalize the pieces that are still to be decided by council, and there's just a couple, and then bring the formal bylaw back to the next council meeting. So just by way of introduction, this was looked at back in June, and it seems a long time ago, yet when I say that date, and yet there's been a little bit of work that was done early summer. Then there was a break with people on vacation and just taking a rest from a number of our initiatives, and then we got back into working on this. And when it came to council in June, there was 6 items that council needed to be clarified or corrected. Some of them are just some words that had to be some components that had to be rewritten for better clarification, and there were, I would say, 3 items that were of the most important. And as you go through the memo, I've tried to describe each one of them. The 3 items that I think are most important for council decision making is the firearms, and there was a lot of public discussion about that, and councillors discussed that. It was discovered there was a clause in the previous bylaw that some folks didn't feel made sense. And with regard to firearms, one of our options, which probably makes sense, is that we know that firearms are regulated by the federal government and to a certain extent by under the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act. So it probably doesn't make sense to speak to other legislation in our bylaw because that legislation exists. So that's where I would say the committee members more or less landed. If council wants to make note of the other legislation, we can do that in the bylaw, but there seemed to be a general consensus that other legislation did not need to get mentioned in the bylaw. The second item that where there's a difference of opinion is whether municipality accepts ashes. The previous bylaw allowed for cold ashes to be deposited at the landfill. There was some discussion whether the municipality should accept hot and cold ashes. And there's definitely a difference of opinion. And I think it's more in terms of customer service. As you note from the memo, Fire Chief Bob Whitman made it abundantly clear, and we understand why. Even cold ashes that appear cold to someone may actually be hot internally, and people transport them in their vehicles, in the back of their car, and there's concern. We don't want a fire, and Bob has a number of experience where that has happened. So that's one of the decision-making pieces that the council has to consider. Does the municipality ban ashes altogether, hot and cold, or just hot ashes? And I'm thinking that at some point our fire chief may want to speak to that, because I know how passionately he feels about it. The third item, which I don't really think is an issue, but there was a lot of discussion, and that's with regard to scavenging. So we've created a definition, and in order to encourage reuse, instead of people coming in and scavenging and potentially hurting themselves and creating issues with the municipality, we don't want people climbing into the scrap metal pile or our furniture bin. Our public works manager has done some research on creating a reuse centers. And I think that it makes sense, perhaps if the mayor agrees, that Dave could speak to that now, if council is interested. It's not something that he's implementing right away, and I think the plan is to slowly implement it by the spring of next year. And that would create an opportunity for people to bring gently used or previously loved items that may be of use to others, and put them in an area where people could pick them up, perhaps make a donation. I've seen donations to fire departments. I've seen donations to all sorts of organizations who have a needy cause, and people can choose to donate what they like. And it would be up to our landfill attendants to decide what goes in the reuse center and what doesn't. For instance, you don't want chairs with fabric on them. We don't want electronics, because we have a place to reuse electronics. So just the other three items, as I said, I think we're just semantics in terms of clarifying some of the wording in the bylaw. But those are the three items that I think require a bit of council discussion, more particularly what we say about firearms in the bylaw, whether we accept ashes at all, and we'll have Dave talk a little bit about what his vision for a reuse center. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if the best way to deal with this would be to take these issues, each one in turn, and just, and just raise them and have the necessary discussion around them. If you're all right with that approach, let's talk about firearms first. The recommendation of the task force, it appears, is that, or the ad hoc committee, is that we simply remove section 9.2 altogether. Is there any discussion around that? Does anyone feel strongly that that's not the way to go?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you. I'm not.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
It sounds like there isn't any. It's just if you're opposed to it. I guess my view of it was, first, and I had nothing to do with what was originally in the, in the bylaw, but my view of it was that you really don't want people discharging firearms around the landfill site when it's in operation. But it appears that the MNR, well, I think the rule is that you can't hunt bears, right? So in the vicinity of the of the dump. But I don't know. I guess if nobody sees that it's a problem, we can leave it out of here. It would be most likely if someone were discharging a firearm in an unsafe manner around the landfill site, it would be the OPP would be involved and it would be a federal offense, right? So, firearms offense. So I'm not going to argue that it should be left in here. Then is there anyone who is not okay with with accepting the recommendation and removing section 9.2 altogether?
Mr. Mayor, it's Paul Rossiter here.
Go ahead, Paul. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. I realized you had come on the call and I meant to introduce you, so I apologize. Our bylaw officer, Paul Rossiter, joined us about, I don't know, 15 minutes ago or so, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr. Mayor, no problem there. It's
Go ahead.
just that part of our bylaw, that's been in previous bylaws for years. And in my opinion, it's like the people are already educated toward that prohibition. And they're already aware of the stipulations that's in there. So, I mean, to take that out now, like you mentioned, we don't want people going in there shooting bears. So the question is, would that encourage people to go to the landfill sites now and start shooting bears and create other issues such as complaints from the adjoining neighbors for the discharging of firearms late at night, early morning? So I was quite happy with that being in the old bylaw. So if council wants to remove it, I'm just expressing my opinion on it. It was fine all along, and to take it out, I don't think it would, let's just say, benefit anybody. That's my comment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the ad hoc committee or others who worked on this?
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor, if I
McEwen?
could, Councillor Woods.
Okay, Councillor McEwen I got first, but I'll get you next, Councillor Woods.
Okay, I'll just wait a little bit here. The 400 meters, it's already set in legislation. So we don't have to worry about that in terms of hunting bears. You're not allowed to hunt or bait bears within 400 meters of a landfill site. I guess the one thing that we thought was just totally ridiculous is that 1,000 meters, which is 3,000 feet, 5/8 of a mile or whatever it is there. For people who own properties around landfills, it's very restrictive in terms of someone being able to hunt ducks at a duck pond or hunt a partridge around their properties within that sort of limit. Hunting on the landfill site at all, that's definitely a no-no. If that's what Mr. Rossiter is referring to, then we could stipulate that authorized personnel only allowed to hunt at landfill sites, period. I don't see where it's ever been an issue. And I don't know of a problem I don't know when there's been a problem. And certainly now we're in a much more secured position around our landfills to keep people away from landfills and out of them and off hours, all that kind of thing with gates and video and such. So I just don't see the significance of the 1,000 meters personally. That's my personal.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Woods was next, and then I have a couple of questions.
Almost pretty much with going along with what Councillor McEwen had to say there. The discharge of firearms, the hunting or bear baiting anywhere, that's part of our hunting program. So all hunters know that you can't do that within 400 meters of any landfill anywhere. And that's already a clear regulation. But if there was something that council felt we had to put in to say, you know, no discharge of a firearm on the landfill footprint or on the landfill property, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all, and I don't think anybody would. You know, it's municipal property. We don't want anybody shooting guns in there. But for the people that would fall within that 1,000-meter radius, like Councillor McHugh was saying, if you're going out hunting for small game or, you know, upland birds, the grouse or rabbit or anything like that, you should be able to. To me, I don't see that as a serious effect on the landfill. I mean, you, as a hunter and a marksman, you're supposed to know your shot and beyond. And any misuse of firearms, that's why we have the OPP. That's why we pay them the money for policing, right? Call them and address with them the situation, and then they will come out and they will do their job. That's what they're equipped for. I just don't think it didn't make sense to leave any of these restrictions or this restriction in a landfill bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that comment. The question I was going to ask is there any signage at the landfill sites currently that talks about either of these things, either discharging firearms, period, on the landfill site, or hunting or hunting or baiting bears within 400 meters? And if the answer is no, would it make sense to still have a sign there that reminds people that, I guess, to address the concern that Paul Rossiter raised earlier, would it make sense to have a sign at the landfill site or signs in the vicinity or close to it that remind people that that they can't do it?
I wouldn't have an issue with that, Mr. Mayor. I think that might be a good idea if we posted a sign on the gates saying that, you know, provincial regulation states that within 400 meters of a landfill, you can't bait or hunt bears. Education is always a good thing. We put a sign up and it's there for people to read as they're entering the property. I wouldn't have an issue with that. I don't know how the rest of the council would feel about it.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I think a sign, and then you can put underneath it sort of, you know, provincial law, whatever it is, you know, how it refers to a bylaw or a law or whatever. I think that's a good idea. I think anyone that would go in and shoot a bear in the landfill site would not be deterred by a landfill bylaw. I don't think they're reading a bylaw. In fact, they're probably not reading at all, in my opinion, for them to go into a landfill site and shoot a bear. Like, hunters are good people, and they don't do that kind of stuff. So I have no problem with it coming out of our bylaw and posting a sign. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any other comments about this particular item?
I think that's a good suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
So can we say then, we'll put it to a vote in a minute, but can we say the consensus is that yes, it should be removed? So remove, what is it called? Section 9.2, section
I actually think it's
9.12,
9.12, Mr. Mayor. There's a small error in the memo, but the heading says.
oh, yes, it
9.12.
is 9.12, you're correct.
Yes.
9.212 entirely, and post sign. Is everybody okay with that as a resolution of this one?
I'm okay.
And if nobody is objecting, then we could move on to ashes. And I guess I will, the recommendation, as I see it, is that we continue to accept cold ashes, but is that, you know, am I reading this correctly from the ad hoc committee? Is it that we continue to accept cold ashes, or what are supposed to be cold ashes?
Mr. Mayor, I think from my perspective, if we accept any ashes, we would need a containment process to ensure that no hot or live ashes get into the landfills. Therefore, if we're accepting them, we would need an apparatus, if you will, or
Yep.
containment, something that is controllable by the landfill staff to handle the ashes. And if that is not a doable thing, then I guess we don't accept ashes. I think that was the way I thought it ended. So it's a little bit of an unended situation here.
Can I just ask, is there currently no receptacle for the ashes, like a 45-gallon drum or something
Not to my knowledge.
on a rock?
On a
No?
rock, yeah.
Like
That
an
land-
incinerator? Yeah, no, there isn't. So
I
what,
think,
go ahead, Councilor.
sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think at one point that was the practice. There was some steel drums that were being used for it, at least out on alts. I don't know really what happened to that. That's something that Councillor McEwen and I and the committee, we batted around for a while, and that was my first idea was, can't we cut the top off of some 45-gallon drums? I don't think it would be a good idea if we did have something like that anywhere near the actual hole where we dump our garbage. You know, keep it in
Correct.
a little bit farther away, so that, you know, there is no possibility that, you know, the can could get blown in or kicked in or knocked in by someone backing up, kind of thing, into the garbage. But yeah, some steel drums for cold ashes. And then again, you know, education. We put up a sign that, you know, explaining to people how long ashes could actually stay warm for, right? Maybe post something on the website. You know, you take the ashes out, put them in a can, put them in your garage for a day, and then you go back in there and they're not cold yet, right? I mean, the reality is you put your hand in there, you're probably going to burn yourself real bad. So we wouldn't want something like that. But if you've got ashes in a container at your property for, you know, a couple of weeks or a month or something like that, and you've checked them and maybe it's rained on them or you've wet them down, and then we have a spot that we can dispose of them in the dump, I think it might be useful for the taxpayers that have been bringing ashes to the dump.
Okay, thank you. I will ask both our fire chief and our manager of public works if they want to comment at this point, just so we have everybody's view on the. Bob, do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. When I was asked, my recommendation was that we do not accept ashes, hot or cold. People will think they're out and transport them. We had an incident this year where some people were transporting some wood from their wood stove, and it actually caught their trailer on fire going to the Ald's landfill site. Both the lady and the gentleman swore up and down that they poured lots of water on it. My recommendation that we don't accept ashes, but it's a council decision, so it's mine is that we don't.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask, are you not concerned that people, if we refuse to take them, that people will dump them either in the bush or at the side of the road or some other place? And then if they aren't really out, that they will then, you know, start a structure fire or a forest fire or.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had a structure fire due to somebody who actually cleaned out their stove and put their ashes outside on their deck, and it caused a structure fire. And yeah, they can dump them in the bush and it would cause another bush fire. But you have a fire in one of those landfill sites, they're closed. You won't be opening them. Never get them opened again. So my recommendation is not to do it. I understand that there must be a ton of people that bring their ashes to the landfill site because it seems to be an issue. My recommendation is not to accept them at the landfill site. Therefore, they're not transporting them potentially hot. And most people that have a wood stove get rid of their ashes on their property somewhere and somehow. My recommendation still stands as it's as a no.
Okay, thank you. I give the same opportunity to David Creaser if you have a comment you want to make.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with our fire chief that they are a risk, and we have had a fire last winter up at Alds in the footprint, which was actually in the garbage, which we had to deal with, which was of concern. Mind you, it's in the winter, but still we had a fire. If we were to move ahead and with the ashes, I believe that we should put some effort into some research to a proper vestibule that could mitigate the risk. So they're still going to have the risk of transportation when they bring it up, as our fire chief alluded to. Any wind being introduced or air being introduced to the ashes can certainly rejuvenate them and get them working again on their way to the landfill. But once they get there, if we have a well laid out area that had a good, maybe heavy steel container that could snuff out the air, I think that would be prudent to look at that, as well as signage and education on our. I believe Councillor Woods said we could post some information on the website regarding safety around ashes, maybe in the home and maybe on the way to the transfer or the landfill if we're going that way as well. Maybe it would be just a good idea in general, but that would be my thoughts on the matter.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors who haven't spoken on this. Councillor
Yes,
Dorn
I have a
Matthews.
question, Mr. Mayor. Do we have any information with regards to how much ashes we get brought to the landfill in the year? I'm just curious as to, is this a big issue of a lot of ashes coming that we need to find a receptacle for this, or is this a fairly not common practice? I've never taken my ashes to the dump, so I'm not sure how many people are doing it. We put ours in the garden and things like that. So maybe some of it can be education to people of the uses that they can have for ashes around their property. I know when it's icy out, we'll put it down on the ice so that it's not slippery. And I watched a great video from FOCA on combating the effects of acid rain in our forests for maple bushes, for maple syrup producers, that ash actually will reverse the effects of acid rain. So there's a lot of great uses for ash, you know, as long as it's cold. But I'm just curious, are we trying to help out a lot of people that are bringing ashes to the landfill, or just a few? How big a problem is this going to be if we don't accept ashes, I guess is my question.
Could someone answer that?
I wasn't able to receive the actual question, Mr. Mayor.
It was just
So
how
that-
many
that
people,
unclear.
sorry, Councillor McCune, it was just, the question was how many people bring ashes to the landfill sites? And I guess the secondary question would be, is it possible for us to somehow educate them on how to dispose of them properly on their own property, which I think is what many of us do. In fact, you know, and there is mean, there could be some education / instruction or information on why it is in fact beneficial to use them in a garden, use them at the bases, use them around your trees, and there's lots of other things you can do with them.
Mr.
Make
Mayor, just,
soap out of them.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. Maybe it would be prudent to not accept any ashes and just see where it ends up. Give it a year's test run or something, and maybe Councillor Gora Matthews has a good point. Maybe we don't have as many as we think we do. I know one of the biggest things, I guess, that came out of it when we were talking, Councillor Woods and myself, was what do people from campsites and camping areas do with their ashes when they have to clean them out and other people are coming in to use the equipment, maybe in cottages and rental places and that kind of thing. Maybe it's an education thing there that they have to learn how to look after and handle their own ashes too. I don't know. I burn wood all winter long and I dispose of my own ashes, so it's not a personal thing for me. But I don't think everyone has a sufficient sized property to get rid of their ashes. I think that was one of our biggest concerns.
I wonder, David, if you have any indication of how much of this type of material we're getting and where it's coming from.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've discussed this with our landfill attendants, and I didn't get any good answer beyond speculation. They're not aware of actually visually seeing much of the ashes. Their impression is that there's ashes coming in, but they're not necessarily seeing it. They're just assuming it's coming in. So they do see a few people come in, but actually physically seeing the people and having witnessed the actual ashes, they don't see many people, but they're just speculating that that is coming in through mixed with their garbage. But we don't have any good information to that end.
Hey, thanks. Does anyone else have any insight into this? Like I have heard about people bringing ashes and I've heard about them being live, but I have never witnessed anybody bringing any ashes to a landfill site.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Knapp.
Yeah, I don't, I burn wood, not exclusively. It's not my main heat source here, but I use my own ashes, whether it's the odd time you get stuck in the driveway, put some ashes underneath your tire, you'll get out quicker than not. That's one of the main uses I use it for, but so again, and I don't know that I've got a great appreciation of how many ashes go in. If people are putting them in, hidden from the view of the landfill attendants, that concerns me, because there is the potential for a fire. It scares me when the fire chief, and I appreciate his viewpoint on this, says if we have a major fire at a landfill site, it would be closed down. Assuming that's true, that concerns me. I wonder, this may be a wacko kind of idea, but I mean, if there are people that are they need to get rid of their ashes, is there a way that we could set up, a couple of containers or something, at the roads garage, away from the buildings and everything else, and then have an employee there for a morning a month or something, and people who need to bring their ashes, bring them in and put them in that container, and we've got water there. You can water them all down and put them where you want. So is there a way that we could do this away from the landfill site? And the only area I could think of would be the roads garage. And again, I'm not suggesting we put it right beside the building, but and again, it would have to be somewhat controlled and very minimal, like maybe once a month for a morning or something, right? So that's the only other suggestion I could have. for the people that feel that they must get rid of their ashes. And maybe if they, I don't know, that's all my input
Okay.
that I have. Thank you.
All right. So what do you want to do with this? There's a couple of possibilities. One is to one is to, the original proposal was to, I guess, was to ban them entirely. And perhaps that would require some sort of an education campaign to let people know what they can use them for and how they should handle them. The other is to set up at each landfill site a receptacle where they can be put safely so that they don't, so that there's no risk of them setting the landfill site on fire, or very little risk. I don't, the recommendation was, I take it, the recommendation of the ad hoc committee was the latter, which is to set up a receptacle for people who sort of insist on bringing them there, and you know, to try to make it as safe as possible, so it's not, we don't get fires at the
Mayor.
landfill site. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, do we know what other municipalities do? I mean, everyone has this issue, right? I mean, what do all the surrounding municipalities, are ashes allowed in them or not? Or what safeguards do they do? And do we, since we don't know how many are going in, maybe we should do a little research at other places to, you know, before we make a decision on that.
David or Michelle, any comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to look into that and get back to council with more information on what our neighbors are doing.
Would it be worth putting something out in our, you know, on our our website and media and so on, asking people, try to ascertain how many people there are that actually care about this or want this? Because it sounds like we don't really have any sense of how big a problem it is. That's not to say, David, that you shouldn't do what you just said. I just another. I don't want to sort of drag this thing out forever, but maybe we do need to get a little more information.
My concern, Mr. Mayor, is that if we tell them that they can't, I don't want to create people that will hide it even more and still put their ashes in. That, you know, we may get the exact opposite effect that we want, right? Right now, I guess people know they can bring cold ashes to the landfill site. So I just don't want to, get the exact opposite reaction that we have. So I think we need a little more information before we finally decide on this.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Lamb hit the nail on the head as to what we were really concerned about was the sneakiness and the bringing ashes in, and now we're possibly going to force that even further. So I guess that's kind of a bottom line in a sense, in my opinion, as to why we're going to a controlled receipt of the ashes. So anyway, maybe Councillor Woods can weigh in a bit more. We talked about this a heck of a long time ago.
Yeah.
I remember going to the landfill to see where they were dumped, just only at York Street, pardon me. And it didn't seem like there was a lot of ashes being dumped there, but you could certainly see where they were dumped on the rocks over to the right-hand side of the dump. So in terms of volume, I can't speak to that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
Yeah, we did talk about this quite some time ago, and we basically came up kind of the questions that everyone else has. How many people are using it? Nobody could really quantify it. I know I have seen ashes in previous years. I talked to some of the guys in the landfill, and they couldn't give me 5 people or 100 people come in and do it. Maybe we get more information on what everyone else around us is doing, but I still do think that a sign at the dump, whether we're going to take ashes or not, because for the people that maybe have been, if we ever decide no, we have a sign there that says, this is why we're not taking them, and these are the other uses you can use them for. A little bit of education on how long they actually stay hot for. I mean, a sign goes a long way, as long as it's in the right location and people can see it right away. But I mean, this isn't something I'm not saying that we have to take them no matter what. Maybe we just say, we don't take them at all right now. We're going to investigate it. If we have a whole bunch of taxpayers saying, what happened? I always brought my ashes there. Then maybe we can look at a proper container to put them in, and if it's a big problem. But I mean, I don't ever bring ashes there. I've never brought ashes to the dump. I've done what everyone else has said tonight. I sprinkle them in the driveway. I put them in my gardens, dump them in a back corner of the yard. But I just know that there has been people that have used it. A friend of mine who rents cottages up here quite a bit, one of the stipulations in the contracts for the places that he has rented is if you're using the wood stove, you have to clean the wood stove and get rid of the ashes. If people were bringing it to the dump and it was cold, that was fine. But, if someone decides to throw them beside the cottage that they just rented and then they leave and drive home and now we have a structure fire, it's just kind of the ideas that we were throwing around and potential concerns.
Okay, well, I'm wondering if, since we don't keep going around on this forever, I'm wondering, the recommendation seemed to be that we continue to accept cold ashes with a suitable receptacle. In other words, it's got to go in a safe place, and that we post signage and educate people on how to deal with ashes and maybe what some of the good things they can do with them are without bringing them to landfill. Would anybody be opposed to that solution at this point? We're not actually changing anything. I mean, I think, I guess we could do, as Councillor Woods has suggested, we could say, all right, fine, we're not going to take them, and then wait to see what kind of reaction we get. But that may not produce the desired effect. That may be better for us to simply, tighten up where they go when they get to the landfill, and try to provide some clear direction to people on how they need to deal with them.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as far as, excuse me, if I may.
You may.
Yeah. I don't know. A little bit more information isn't going to hurt us in making this decision. I mean, it'll just be another meeting, and we can come back and finalize it. Again, I see nothing wrong with getting a little bit of wisdom from other municipalities saying, how do you deal with ashes? If everyone comes back and they're all don't allow them, and for the reasons that the fire chief says, then that makes our decision easier. If it comes back that everyone does, and there's some way of doing it that we don't know about, then that's good information too. So I prefer to get some more information on it, not to drag it out, but I mean, being asked, I just think that's the way to go, not make a decision here when we don't even know how many are going in. We're not even, we're concerned, or I am, about going underground and causing more ashes to go in. But at the same time, just do a little research, which the road superintendent is saying he'll do. So anyway, that's my feeling. It may differ from others, but that's what I feel. I think we should pend it for now.
Okay, so is everyone okay with that as a direction forward, that we get some more information?
I support that.
Okay. Seems to be a consensus around that. Okay, so I'll I will note that that's what it's actually further research is what we're talking about here. Okay, can we move on to this issue of scavenging? And perhaps I could ask our manager of public works to talk about how he sees this working and how he sees it being implemented. In other words, what how he would introduce this.
Yes, thank you. We have provided a definition here, and we're also we're working on right now putting a reuse area into play. We have our sea containers, which are being retrofitted with a wall to separate half of the unit, and we're looking at moving those closer to the footprint of the waste where people dump. That being to allow make it convenient for our ratepayers, also to allow our landfill staff less steps when cleaning it out. So if they had to clean it out, they wouldn't have to take as many steps walking all the way across the site. So that's more likely for us to have a clean, effective reuse area. We're looking at a small area that is relatively well lit, that can have materials moving quickly. So reuse items moving quickly, we don't want things sitting in there and we don't want it packed right up so people can't see what they're grabbing. But I've looked at a few of our neighbors to see what they're doing. It seems the smaller ones seem to be clean and they seem to be effective, and people seem to take plenty of interest in those too. Maybe it makes the items seem more desirable because there's less of them. But that's what we're looking at implementing very shortly. And as far as scavenging goes, it is a concern if it's in our bins or landfill footprint, or especially in our metal pile. Right now, we have our backhoe shove up our material quite high, and it does push things together, and it's not a good situation to have anybody climbing through there. However, in the past, we have had people ask for a part off a barbecue wheel or something that they've asked our landfill attendants if they could get. Our landfill attendant has, if used their best judgment and said, well, if it's close by and we can grab it, then landfill attendant will get it for them. But use their best judgment if it's something small that's they can safely grab to make something reusable, something such as that. But as far as high grading, people sorting through the metal pile looking for materials that are worth money, we don't allow that. So that shouldn't be a change from this bylaw from the last one. So and we hope that we can encourage people to use our reuse center. We're going to start small with the sea container, see how it goes, and see if we can get a good flow going with that, and then get more information to see how it's going, and if it may evolve in the future. But that's how we're going to start with that. Any further questions on scavenging, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments about this one? I guess in particular, I would ask if there's anyone opposed to the recommendation, which is that we continue to prohibit scavenging, but implement a reuse area so that people can get access to reusing certain materials and items that are clearly reusable without having to rummage through the landfill site to find them. And so I'm not hearing anybody's opposed to that. Is anyone opposed to the other three amendments, which had to do with refrigerant, the sharps, and the reference in section 5.6 to otherwise, or the definition of sharp object. Okay, so let me just try something. There is a motion on the there isn't a motion on the floor. Sorry, there's a motion that's suggested. And I probably could have taken this at the beginning, but anyway, it's that the Council of the Municipality Whitestone does hereby receive the draft waste management bylaw and memo dated October 4th, 2021 for information. And that with the following amendments, staff be requested to finalize the bylaw and bring the bylaw back to council. Says at the next available council meeting, which doesn't mean the next council meeting, the next one that's, well, at a future council meeting, I guess. And the amendments that we had were so far: firearms, remove section 9.12 entirely and post signage. The ashes was that we conduct further research on what other municipalities do. And the third one was the scavenging, that we continue to prohibit scavenging but implement a reuse area. Would somebody like to move that just so we can give staff some direction to carry on with and bring this back?
I will.
Councillor Gorman Matthews, thank you. A seconder.
I'll second, Councilor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Okay, is there any further discussion? Anyone opposed to that? Okay, hearing nothing, I guess we have a way forward then. Thank you. Item 14.2 is a motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby support the conservation and education activities of the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve through the purchase of a membership for an annual cost of $120. Is there a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Councillor Gorman Matthews. Seconder,
I will second that.
Councillor McEwen. Thank you. I'm just trying to get the item up on the screen, but who would like to speak to this?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me a second. I'll put it- Sorry about that. Go ahead, please.
Sure. So I brought this up with our CAO numerous times. We've mentioned during different conversations that we should look into becoming a member of the biosphere. In particular, this past year, we've done a lot of joint work with them on the invasive species, and I just think it's a good way to support them, as well as many of the other municipalities are our members as well. And, you know, hopefully with some of the environmental stewardship work that we're doing for next year, we can partner with them again. So I think for $120, it's a good community outreach and support with them. They have lots of resources that we can tap into and this as well. So that was my idea.
Okay, thank you. I wonder, can you confirm, Beth, that the $120 is what we would end up paying? Because I was under the impression, I mean, looked into this before, that it's actually more than that. No?
You can check with our CAO, but she did call them and confirmed it with them.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll jump in if I may, Mr. Mayor. So there's two components. The membership is $120 a year, and I did indeed call because I spoke to a person who was appeared to be somewhat new, and I thought they'd made a mistake, but no, it's $120 annually. The cost of joining IceCap, which is an arm of the Georgian Bay Biosphere that's doing other climate related things, is definitely somewhat more substantial. And if I recall, it was maybe $2,500 was the contribution they were looking for. Although I'd have to look back on when they attended a council meeting a couple of years ago. But this is really just having access to all of the educational pieces that Georgian Bay Biosphere offers for $120 a year, and it seems like a pretty good deal.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments about this?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Yeah, I'm okay with the $120 to just to join, and particularly if they're helping us out in the invasive species and that sort of thing, that's one thing. But the second part, which is the more substantive investment, this council debated a couple of years ago and decided we weren't part of the biosphere and that we were not going to partake in that. So I know that particular decision is not up for revision tonight. So I'll be supportive of this. There'd have to be a lot change to be supportive of the other thing. But anyway, I'm okay with this particular investment, or minor cost, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would just correct something. We are, in fact, Whitestone, part of Whitestone is in the Georgian Bay Biosphere Reserve. I checked this on the maps a while back. So I mean, I don't disagree with Councillor Lamb that we did talk about it. And by the way, I was and am a proponent of having us identify ourselves with them and try to take advantage of the resources that they have that are useful for us and I believe for our ratepayers as well, who are interested in various conservation aspects and so on. They do a lot of good things. So I'm always supportive of that. But anyway, we did make a decision that we wouldn't join it the last time it came up. I don't think that's an irrevocable decision or anything, but it's I'm in favor of the motion as it is. I think it's useful for us to do that. As far as IceCap is concerned, you will notice in the correspondence that there is quite a bit of material related to IceCap. In fact, they had meetings not too long ago, and I didn't join in on them. You're allowed to. We were allowed to, but just to like the Zoom meetings, to see what they were talking about and so on. But I didn't have time. So, but I would definitely say that's a discussion for another day. You will notice if you read that material when we get there that to the correspondence that well, I guess Whitestone and I think McDougall did not. It appears are not participating because if you look at the graphs of what the different, or the little charts that show what stages the different municipalities that are participating are at, we are kind of at the we haven't participated stage, right? So anyway, is there anybody else who wishes to comment on this one?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a quick comment that I think that it's good to stay in touch with the Biosphere folks for their resources. Even the information that came out on IceCap here is quite substantive. It's interesting to see that Sigmund Carling, Georgian Bay, and McKellar, for instance, even, they've made some pretty good strides in project-related issues under the umbrella of ISCAP and in cooperation with the Viceroy Group. So it's good to stay in touch with it, and maybe at some point in time we can entertain as a council getting into some various aspects of issues that would be ISCAP related. As Council Lamb suggested, we really didn't get into it when they presented it to us. That could be something for a future council. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? So is
Mr.
anyone,
Mayor,
go ahead,
sorry.
Brian, go ahead.
I a question to you. Where in Whitestone is actually part of the reserve? I mean, I've looked at that map multiple times, and I can't find where Whitestone would actually be part of it. Maybe I'm just asking you solely as a question.
Well, I don't have the map in front of me, but I remember having this discussion with someone from the reserve quite some time ago, from Georgian Bay Viceroy Reserve, saying, well, we're not, because they were kind of saying, well, don't we participate? And I said, well, I think we're outside of the reserve, thinking that it was only the narrow portion that goes along the shore of Georgian Bay. And they showed me that in fact there was, we touched, I mean, most of the municipalities it's not part of the reserve, but they showed me that it touched on it. So if you want, I can take that back and look at it, but again, and get you an answer. I'm not sure I can produce it right now, but unless it's, well, no, I don't think the maps are included in this stuff we have tonight. But anyway, it's that was my impression, that we were in fact part of the.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I believe it's up by the Magnetawan River, that part of where it goes into Georgian Bay. I think that section of the municipality is part of the reserve.
Yeah, it's the South Magnetawan part over
Yes.
towards Harris Lake, and that
Mhm.
part of that's just where we get the closest to
Yeah.
Georgian Bay. Yeah. Anyway, I'll get you an answer. It's a good question. We should. Anyway, is any other comments? Is anyone opposed to this motion? All right, hearing none, I'll declare it carried, and we'll. That brings us to 14.3, which is an information update on the Whitestone and Area Nursing Station building expansion. Who's going to do that? Councillor McEwen or our CAO clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can do that unless Councillor McEwen would like to speak to it.
No, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Marcella wasn't able to attend tonight, so I said I would speak on her behalf. I think three important pieces to speak to the update. That there is a new intern nurse practitioner working out of the Whitestone Nursing Station, and everyone's excited to have her. Her name is Nikki Mays, and she's working with Teresa, building her skill set as an intern. And that started in September. The second is fundraising information, off to a good start, as Marcella said in her memo here. They've taken a little bit of hiatus right now because there's been bake sales and all sorts of activities throughout the summer. I know they've reached out to some of the local businesses, and they're just contemplating what their next steps are for fundraising. And for those of you that have involved in fundraising in the past, you know that at some point you have to take a break because people were excited about it in the summer. So a little bit of downtime, but they're thinking about their next steps. And as Marcella indicated, they're off to a good start. They've reached about 40.5% of the goal. The third item, that the anonymous donor who initially indicated they would meet matching funds of 80,000 has now increased that to 90,000. And I understand it's based on the efforts the funding committee had throughout the summer. And the 90,000 meets one half of what their goal is of the 180,000. And of course, their thank yous as always for the support for all the community and the businesses and the municipalities and everyone that's both McKellar and Magnetawan have done a good job in advertising some of the activities. So that's the good news with the nursing station. And I can tell you from the design and build perspective, it's on track in terms of what's happening with the architect, and we'll be ready to go to tender in the new year. So that's what I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for our CAO on that report?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, great job by everyone involved. Obviously, the fundraising seems to be going well. And I know I challenged some road associations, and I know they've kind of stepped up, and we should all be appreciative of that. And of course, the hard work of the people on the garage sales and things like that. So, you know, a good news story. Obviously, I think the community is behind this. I guess a comment I would make is, you know, with the hiring of an additional nurse practitioner, the challenge, not so much to Marcella, but, you know, to Donald Sanderson and others is, you know, if there's more people in there, one of the problems that I've heard people express is, you know, they work all day with, you know, in Parry Sound or whatever, and they need some attention, you know, in the evening, and it's pretty difficult. The other problem I've had expressed to me is people call up for an appointment, and the first time they can get an appointment for what they feel is more urgent than obviously the nurse's station is like 3 weeks out or something, right? So hopefully the hiring of this person, and there's no one here tonight that can really answer that, but hopefully the hiring of this person will relieve some of those situations, because you know, that's important to our citizens, and we can't lose sight of that. So anyway, those are my comments. But again, good work by all, and we're out of the summer months, so people aren't so worried about opening, you know, because of the influx of people in the summer of our residents. But again, there are people that are here all year round who work all year round and are not able to attend at 11 o'clock or in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon because of other commitments. So I'm sure hopefully they'll bear that in mind as we proceed to get this done. So thank you. That's all my comments.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I just might comment on the participation from the volunteers from Magnetawan in particular, and also from McKellar. Shouldn't leave them out. We had folks up assisting with the yard sales and promoting and doing fundraising for us. Certainly what Councillor Lamb just alluded to was possibly not getting into the nursing station at the most opportune time for some. I hear some very positive comments from folks who have been attended to at the nursing station when they couldn't get in, or afraid or concerned about going into the hospital in this past year. So I think there's good luck stories, and I know there's concerns too about attendance and attendees, people getting in and most opportune times when they'd like to. Hopefully that will be addressed. It's an ongoing discussion, of course, with the health unit or West Parry Sound Health Center and the nurse practitioner led clinic. So good comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? If not, I think we could move on to correspondence. And I'll take a motion that, whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items listed on page 5 of the October 4th, 2021 council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that council received the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further discussion or action. Is there a mover and seconder?
I'll move it, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second Councillor Woods.
thank you, Councillor Woods. Now, are there any of these items that you would like to pull out?
Yes, Counselor Lamb, I'd like to pull out M.
M.
M is in mother.
Yes, okay, thank you. I will just look, see what that is, if you don't mind.
That's on the north end of Whitestone Lake and the boat launch.
Oh, that's the boat launch one. Okay, all right. Okay, sorry, that's the that's, I'll call it offer of boat launch. Boat launch. And that's on Shirley, right?
That's correct.
Shirley Road. Are there any other ones you'd like to talk about? Hearing none, I think we're at number M. So how about we go ahead and talk about M.
Yeah, Counselor Lamb, I heard from these people, I've been off and on the last 6 months on this, not in any great detail, but they North Meadow Cove Road has had this boat launch and Quonset hut over there for some years. I think I started the discussion with Gary Payne at one point, and Gary has since passed away, and it's been picked up by others over there, and the association. So, I don't mean to judge this in any way. I think that all I'd simply ask is that staff review the correspondence, meet with the people if needed to see the area and make sure we understand exactly what they are. They the brief thing that I've been told is that they own both the Quonset hut and the boat launch. They don't have any specific insurance on that, and they're concerned about that. People use it. They allow people at the hunt camp, 2 or 3 hunt camps, to use it, particularly in the fall. I don't think they allow too many to park there. But indeed, it's other than the end of Farley's Road, which we have, people can put the boats in over there. But that area has parking that is, people pay for parking over in that area. This would be another boat launch in the north end of the lake, and I think they also quote in their correspondence, the official plan, where I think it specifically kind of talks to that. So that's what they're kind of sort of asking, is that we look to enter into some arrangement with them. I think they're particularly concerned about their insurance and liability. But I'm sure there's other things too. So again, simply I would ask that we do some legwork on this thing and then bring it back at some point to council, so we can fully debate it and make some decisions with respect to it. So thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Other comments or Councillor Gorman-Matthews?
Sure. I just wanted to add that I spoke to them as well. And I believe that they are still in the process of getting some more information together. They do have a lawyer and such, so they're just trying to get together in their mind what they would like this to look like. And I believe that they're planning on doing a presentation and providing us with more information in the near future. So it would be, I'll,
Yeah.
confirm with Councillor Lamb's idea that, if staff could work with them to develop something, an idea to bring to council, that would be great.
Councillor McEwen, did you?
Yeah, I ditto what Councillor Lamb and Councillor Gorham Matthews just said. Yeah, I talked to Byron also, and I had heard of this earlier at one point as well. I think it's potentially an opportune situation for Whitestone. There aren't going to be a lot of these situations come along where we can approach or look into the issues of launches and landings. It's a ready-made one. It's a large property, so it does have a lot of potential. But as has been mentioned, we'll have to certainly discuss it with them and look at it seriously, and whether we could lease it or work some agreement with them. The insurance thing did come up with Byron as well. He said that it's a really big deal for them in their association right at this current time. So certainly worth investigating with them on behalf of council. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? That's Councillor Woods.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I had a good discussion with Mr. Benke Byron about this. And I think it's definitely a worthwhile thing to be looking at for sure. As Councillor McEwen had said there, that it's already an established launch point. We could get the right to use it or perhaps buy it and give people another access point onto the lake. That's always a good thing as far as I'm concerned, having access points to all of our lakes. So yeah, I definitely think it'd be a good thing for staff to get in touch with them and have some discussions and bring a report back to us, and then we could all fully discuss it.
Okay, thank you. I did get a phone call from Mr. Benke as well, and until I heard from him, it had escaped my attention that there was something in our official plan about getting more boat launches on Whitestone Lake, which honestly doesn't surprise me in any way. But I guess the question that we ought to be asking when we consider this sort of thing is what in fact is the demand for parking and launching and docking and so on Whitestone Lake. And I have not put my mind to that question previously, although certainly the council has done, as you know, a bunch of work at our main landing, which is in front of the fire hall and the municipal office there at the Dunchurch Beach. Of course, that's on the South Lake, and I'm not sure, I got to be honest with you and say I'm not really sure how other people access the South Lake. And maybe most of them have road access and don't, and all they're using is the launch. But our experience on Wawashkish, of course, tells us that it isn't just a matter of having a boat launch, it's a matter of having parking and docking. And what we did on the Wawashkish situation was a little bit of research to figure out exactly how many properties there were and how many properties there might be, and to add something to that for folks who are assuming that the public has a right to access the lake through these, that these would be treated as public landings, that they certainly are in Wawashkish, that they would, there's a certain amount of that kind of traffic, and that kind of enabled us to size the total requirement and figure out if we have enough space. And and maybe we don't, but we at least made some investment in trying to expand it. So I think that would be a good starting point for looking at this, trying to figure out, well, how many people, if this particular property that is being offered, so to speak, if we were to take them up on that, how many people would use it? And would they want, in fact, to store boats and trailers, not store, but park boats and trailers there? And would it need to be, can it be enlarged? Would it need to be enlarged? All of those kinds of things, just so that we have an idea of sort of where this goes. And of course, other things such as the landing that was mentioned already at the end of Farley's Road, which is a somewhat unusual situation, I guess. So far it is our only paid parking in the municipality that I'm aware of. You're going to hear more about paid parking, enforced parking, later on this fall from Awashkesh, but the Cottagers Association there passed a resolution at their recent annual meeting, which I don't have a copy of, otherwise I would share it with you. But when we get a copy of it, then it'll end up on the agenda. But in any case, this is all sort of grist for the lake access planning subject that I think could come up as a result of this. And I certainly agree that it's something that should be that should be studied, and maybe it should be studied a little more, not just simply a case of going out and taking a look at what they have and what they're offering or suggesting and what we might do with it, but whether that's enough, and we need in fact to have more. And I don't know, maybe council will want to think about having a committee or a task force or something, look at that when the time comes. But we can certainly have staff go and investigate it. And I told Mr. Benke when I talked to him that I would make sure that council knew about it, which you do, and that we would get back to them in due course, and at least pursue it further or check it out. So I think we can assume that that's the action item that will happen as a result of this. Is there anything else under this item or your correspondence? If not, is anyone opposed to passing this motion? To just receive the rest of it? Okay, thank you. Folks, I think we are almost getting close to the end here. Councillor items. Are there any? Okay, I'm going to say none. Questions from the public? There are none, because there are no members of the public on the call that I can, at least not that I can see. Confirming bylaw, mover and seconder, please.
I will move, Councillor Hewen.
Thank you very much. Seconded by?
I'll second. Councillor Wood.
Councillor Lamb.
Okay, I got Councillor Woods first. Thank you. Assuming nobody's opposed to that. How about adjournment?
I'll adjourn, Councillor Lamb. I don't often do that.
Alrighty, and who will second?
I'll second Councillor Woods.
All right, Councillor Woods, thank you very much. All right then, with that, we stand adjourned until, well, we may call another meeting to talk about that subject that we discussed in close, but our next regular meeting is the is it the 21st? 18th, sorry. Should be able to add 4 and 14, shouldn't I? All right, the 18th of October. And I wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving weekend. We don't talk in the
Good
meantime.
night, everyone.